How did we get here? My name is Annalisa Hunter, and I am the pastor here at Suamico United Methodist Church. And a bunch of my leaders have been wondering, how did we get to a point where attendance is declining so significantly, where younger generations are no longer coming back to church to raise their children, where it just doesn't seem like faith life goes beyond an hour on Sunday morning for most of our people? Well, it's not all in our heads. Church life in the United States has changed dramatically over the past couple of generations. There's a research group called Barna Group that does incredible research on church trends and the role of spirituality in life. There are some other groups like Gallup and the Pew Research Center that also conduct research in the area of religion and spirituality in the United States. All of these groups coming together means that we have some really good data on the trends of what role faith plays in the life of Americans today. Now, for many of us, it seems like the church has been declining for a long time, and it has, but it was 1% to 2% a year for a couple of decades. And so, we could kind of ignore it. It wasn't very sudden. It was something that we could just kind of live with. But then something happened after the Great Recession. Around 2010, suddenly it seems like religious life in the United States walked off a cliff, and something changed. People suddenly felt differently about being part of a faith community, of regularly practicing their faith with others, and now we can't ignore it. Even by 2019, before the pandemic, there were churches that were realizing they were facing some big changes, that things that had worked for so long just didn't work anymore. People weren't coming in the doors. There were fewer and fewer people to do more and more work. Now, I was at a meeting once with a consultant from Path One, which is the church development and church planting group of the United Methodist Church. And he was describing the state of the church, and this was before the pandemic, as if we were walking in a fog. That even by the late 80s, we knew that something had changed and our old tricks didn't work anymore. The tools we had in our toolbox weren't helping us build up the church anymore. And for a long time, it felt like we were in a fog. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't even see the next step or two in front of us. But by 2017, 2018, 2019, there was enough research on the churches that were not declining, the churches that were thriving, even flourishing, growing during this time of upheaval, this time of change across the United States. And this research came to show them that they could actually see 6 or 8 steps ahead of them. They maybe couldn't see all the way that they felt like they used to be able to see, but they could see a bunch of steps, and they had ideas about what was working. So here in the Wisconsin Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church, we had some leaders who got together and said, you know what? There is research out there. There are examples. There are role models. There are best practices that we can use in our churches here in Wisconsin to flourish in a time of cultural change. They set up a program called the Institute for Congregational Development. It is open to anyone who would like to take it. It is a commitment, though. It costs a fair amount of money because you're getting a lot of fantastic training. It covers 10 months. For a day and a half each month, you gather with other leaders from Wisconsin, and national consultants come in and do trainings on specific topics for church development and how to reach people and help people grow in their relationship with Jesus. I strongly recommend Institute for Congregational Development for anyone who wants to do it. But more importantly, I'd like to make a series of short videos to share with the leaders of my congregation that go through some of the key best practices that have emerged out of the fog, the best practices that seem to really matter in helping us fulfill the Great Commission that Jesus gave us at the end of the Gospels, to go and make disciples of Jesus Christ. This is also the mission of the United Methodist Church, to make disciples of Jesus for the transformation of the world. Jesus didn't just train his disciples to love God, but also to love and serve our neighbors. So the 3 books that I think are most critical for helping us understand how to lead the church in these changing times are, first of all, Disciple Like Jesus. This is written by Reverend Phil Maynard out of the Florida Annual Conference, and this does a great job explaining the answer to the question of just what is a disciple. Many of us would have a hard time defining what is a disciple and what does a disciple do and how do we grow disciples. So this book does a great job walking us through the 6 areas of discipleship and the types of activities that we can do to help people grow in each of these areas. Now, there's another book called 5 Practices of Fruitful Congregations. This was written by Bishop Robert Schnase of the Rio, Texas annual conference. And he wanted to look at this question of what makes a thriving, flourishing congregation. And he took the 6 practices of discipleship that Phil Maynard talked about and combines them with the 5 areas of our membership vows. So he's looking at 5 areas of discipleship here. And he's combining the personal prayer and the worship ones into one. But he looks at actual stories of actual churches. What did they do that brought life back to their church members and to their communities? What did they do to help people connect more deeply with Jesus and to find that area where God was calling them to make a difference, to transform lives and communities? And then finally, it's all great to understand what discipleship is and to think about a huge universe of amazing ministries that we can reach out and do. But we all know that each of our churches has limited resources of time, money, people, facilities. How do we know which ministries we are called to do? Because the needs of the world can feel overwhelming at times. And so the final book that I think is really critical for church leaders today is Mission Possible, and this is the 3rd edition. The 1st and 2nd editions are much smaller. This one's got a lot of really great information into it about how to set up an accountable leadership board that prayerfully discerns what the vision is that God has for a particular congregation and a particular community. And then how do you organize your leaders, your ministry teams, to be able to fill the vision that God is giving you. So I'm going to make a few more videos that go more deeply into some of these concepts so that we can see how they fit together and how we can have a church that is run in such a way that we are equipping and empowering people to live as disciples of Jesus Christ who make a difference in the lives of people around them. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.